Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of The Green Room. In The Green Room, I get to unpack all those great stories and anecdotes and the business lessons I learn in talking to business owners just like you every single day. So sit back, relax, buckle up and enjoy this week's episode of The Green Room podcast. Hello everyone and welcome to the Green Room podcast. Today I've done something a little bit different. I've used AI and I've gone to Reddit and I've scraped Reddit and I've asked what are the 5 biggest issues that Australian businesses are writing about and concerned about and asking about in your forum at the moment. And one of the ones that came back was obviously the cost of doing business in Australia at the moment. Australian businesses at the moment, Australian business owners feel really caught in the middle. They're losing the price war as costs just escalate everywhere they look. And they're wondering how they might fight back. So let me paint you a bit of a picture. Your energy bills in your business arrive and it's always higher than the last quarter again. Your key suppliers send you through a price increase notice. Insurance renewals come in at 18% above last year. And sitting right across from the counter and all of this is a customer who is now sharper, more price conscious and more willing to walk than at any other point that we've seen in the last decade. So we're in this real squeeze where we're caught in the middle. We've got suppliers' costs absolutely flying at us from upstream and we've got our customers downstream that are also experiencing cost of living pressures and or business pressures and are pushing back on us like never before in recent times. So I want to give you 3 very clear tips and walk you through those on what you can do about it. Because when you're being squeezed at both ends, like many businesses are at the moment, one single fix isn't going to fix it. But I think there's 3 key things that you can do that will make a real difference in how you address this business concern. And I've actually gone and done some research as well to try and get some stats to see what that looks like. So I'll be talking to you about those as we go through. So buckle up, enjoy the ride, and hopefully whether you're in the car or you're going for your walk or you're just sitting there listening to the podcast at home, hopefully you really get some key elements, some key ideas, some key tips that can help you in your business from this one today, because clearly you're not alone. This is one of the biggest issues people are talking about. So input costs have risen sharply across the board, and the uncomfortable truth is that they're not coming down in any time soon. Deloitte, who have done some research, confirms that roughly 75% of Australian consumers now actively describe themselves as bargain hunters. So they're not just price aware, but they're price motivated. They're switching brands and providers without hesitation when a better deal appears. Now, this is not a post-COVID hangover. This is here to stay. Deloitte's retail analysts call it a structural shift, a permanent rewiring of how Australians decide where to spend their money. So what does this mean for you in business? Well, clearly, if this is a permanent shift, the old approach is dead, where you set your prices, you keep your head down, you absorb your costs as long as you can, is no longer a viable strategy. It will not result in survival. So here's what I've learned working with small and medium businesses across, so many industries. It's not the squeeze that kills the businesses, it's the response to the squeeze that does. And that's what I want to talk to you about today is what is the best response in a situation that can sometimes feel quite helpless and quite overwhelming. Well, we have to come out on the other side and make really deliberate strategic decisions about our pricing, our cost structures and value. The ones struggling are reacting. They're discounting in panic, they're absorbing in silence, and they're raising prices in a really clumsy way, and then wondering why customers have vanished. I've seen a price rise week 1, a price rise week 2. As businesses are copying it from one supplier, a price rise goes in, the next supplier, another one goes in. And when we niggle away like that, and we might be thinking we're solving the problem, but what we're doing is we're actually not showing the imagination that we need to in this really tense, hard environment. We have to really think differently to be able to get through these things. So here's the 3 things that I want to talk to you about today around how we think differently, how we become very proactive in managing this incredibly difficult circumstance and what we can do about it. First one is know where your margin is actually going before you touch your prices. So rather than be totally reactive to every price rise that come, and here's a mistake I see constantly. A business owner feels the margin squeeze. They immediately conclude that they need to raise prices and they move straight to that conversation without ever doing the forensic work to understand where the margin went in the first place. So quite often, let's talk about a practical example where diesel price has gone up at least $1 and quite often $1.50. It's not unusual. The other day I saw $3.39 at the Bowser. So we were paying $1.85 not so long ago. So if I look at a typical client, they might be doing $7,000 to $10,000. Everyone's different, but they might be doing $7,000 to $10,000 a month in fuel normally, and clearly they're going to double their fuel. So they move to $14,000 to $20,000 a month. Whilst this might seem a significant jump, and it obviously is, the reality is when you put it across a P&L against a significant revenue number, the impact is actually not that significant. But then you might say, hang on, but I've got conduit prices that have gone up 48% last week. I've got insurance prices. We've got all these prices that are coming up to coming at us. So the thing is, it won't be one thing that will be doing the real damage. It'll be multiple things. So if we react to one thing at a time, we're actually just going to annoy our customers and give them every excuse to leave. So let's take a much more forensic view of this, a much more considered view, and really know your numbers. So it's like turning up the thermostat when you're cold without checking whether the back door is wide open. Because you just, without knowing your facts, it won't really have the impact that you're hoping to have. So before you go and make any pricing decisions, let's complete an honest picture of what our cost structure is over the last 12 months. And then really map through what it's likely to be over the next 12 months line by line. And that way we can really see the gap, we can really see the impact, and we can have a much better understanding of what margin overall we're going to have to raise our prices to try and or find other ways to compete in order to remain sustainable. So that's the first thing. Let's do the work. Let's work out where we were 12 months ago, do an audit, work out where all these price rises we think they're going to go line by line, and then look at the difference, look at the margin percentage, and then act once and act decisively. So when we do this, in my experience, almost always serves the same 3 categories of waste. First, subscriptions and services that were set up, used for a while, quietly forgotten, but they're still being billed each month. Second, supplier arrangements that haven't been negotiated in 2 or 3 years, despite the supplier having raised rates, a couple of times. And third, energy costs that could be meaningfully reduced by, either switching or finding more competitive plans. There is data that supports this. A 2025 Commonwealth Bank survey found that 89% of Australian SMEs reported higher input costs, but the majority had not proactively reviewed their supplier contracts in the preceding 12 months. So there's data. So there's a likelihood that you might be paying too much for these things and that you've never simply questioned them. We've just rolled on. So fix the controllables first. Every dollar you recover through cost discipline is a dollar of margin you don't have to recover through a price increase. So that's the first thing, because the goal isn't just to find savings, it's to give yourself negotiating room and decision-making clarity before you go anywhere near your pricing conversations. So that's it. Know where you're at, have a game plan, have an estimate of where we're going to land before we even go anywhere near our customer is step 1. Step 2, raise your prices like a human being, not like a corporate or an AI bot. What does that actually mean? Well, when I ask business owners what they're most afraid of about raising prices, the answer is almost always the same. I'm worried I'll lose customers. And that fear is legitimate, but the research tells us a different story. Customers don't leave because prices go up. Customers leave because they feel blindsided or disrespected or like they've been taken advantage of. The price increase isn't the problem, quite often. It's the way it's communicated. So if you think about your behaviour as a consumer, If a business you love sends you a note explaining that after holding their prices for 3 years, rising ingredient and energy costs mean that they need to make a 12% adjustment for the next month, do you leave? Probably not. You might wince, you might think about it, but you respect the transparency of the conversation and you feel like you're being treated, as an adult. So you're more than likely to stay. Now contrast that with those that don't go down that path, where there might be a silent overnight change, or the same increase but no communication. You notice it; they might notice it on invoice. They might feel that something was done to them rather than with them, and that's when they start looking around. So the principle here is really simple. Customers don't resent price increases. They don't like them, but they don't resent them. They resent unexplained ones. So in practice, this means being really specific, being early and being honest. Tell customers what's driving the change, not in vague corporate talk around input cost pressures, but in plain language like our energy bill has doubled, our freight costs are up 35%, we've absorbed as much of this as we possibly can, and here's what's changing. Give them a lead time, give them context, where possible give them an option, an early renewal at the current rate, a bundled deal, a loyalty recognition. So you could offset it a little bit. A 2024 study published in the Journal of Marketing found that price increases accompanied by transparent cost explanations result in significantly lower customer churn than undisclosed increases of the same magnitude. The businesses that communicate well don't just retain more customers. They often deepen the loyalty because transparency, it's rare, let's face it. And it can be used as a genuine differentiator. So the customers most worth keeping will respect you. The ones who leave over a fair, well-explained price adjustment were always going to be price sensitive to the point of fragility. They were going to probably leave one day, and it's better to know now. So that's number 2, around raising prices like a human, not like an AI bot or a corporate. And number 1 was know where your margin is actually going before you touch your prices. And then number 3, this is one I talk to my clients about a lot, and this is one we do a lot of work around. Stop competing on price, start competing on value. This is the one I push the hardest with my business owners I work with, because it's the most counterintuitive, but actually this is the most powerful. So when margins compress and customers get price sensitive, the natural instinct is to discount. And in Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, he talks about a race to the bottom where equilibrium happens when everyone's competing on price, all things become equal, and then all profits are competed away. And I really makes real sense to me. All profits are competed away. There's nothing left as we all race to the bottom. So we don't want to go there. And the temptation in this market, the instinct, the reflex in this and these really hard business is to do that and just naturally go to discounting, to run a sale, to cut a rate, to offer a deal, and occasionally tactically that might make sense. But as a default response to a value-conscious market, discounting is a trap. You're actually educating your clientele that this is all they need to do. They just need to put pressure on you, and every time you discount, you're teaching them 2 things: that your price, your normal price, isn't the real price, and then if they wait long enough, you'll drop it again. You train them to delay purchasing, to expect concessions, and anchor their perception of your value at a discounted rate. You erode your brand with every percentage you slice off. So this has connotations not just for this market, but when we recover, and we always will, and when we move back into a booming market at some stage down the track in the future, as always happens, swings and roundabouts. If we have trained our customers that price is elastic and they can move it by waiting us out or by pushing harder, that's going to make our life much more difficult than it is currently. So the businesses that are winning at the moment in this environment aren't competing on price; they're competing on value, and that's a very different game. And you go, oh, okay, Chris, what does that actually mean? Well, value doesn't mean adding expensive new services or features. Often it means adding perceived value with minimal cost impact. There's a lot of great books on this. What could be examples? Well, how do we move into our business systems, and we find a way to create a faster turnaround time. We create a guarantee that we weren't offering before. We might put a bundle package together that simplifies the customer decision. We might create a loyalty program and structure that rewards retention. We might create a sense of community through exclusive access, if you like, to us, and communications that make our customers feel like they're in on things, that they belong with us, that they're part of our journey. This proactive communication that makes customers feel genuinely looked after rather than just serviced. And there is real evidence to this as well. So research for McKinsey's in 2025, so very recent, the Australian Consumer Sentiment Study found that while price is the primary trigger for switching, around 40% of brand loyalty is driven by non-price factors. I'll say that again. Yes, price is important, and price is often the primary trigger for switching, but around 40% of brand loyalty is driven by non-price factors. So what are they? They're things like convenience, service and quality, and the emotional experience of dealing with us as a business. So that 40% is our leverage. It's where we can genuinely outcompete larger players who are too big, too slow, too systematized to deliver personalized experience, as we are as SME businesses. I don't know if you've ever been caught in a queue with a big multinational where you press 7 or 8 buttons to try and work your way through. That's not us. We have a competitive advantage by being closer to our customer and not putting them through these systematized processes that are designed to shuffle people through just like sheep in a pen. One of the business owners I work with runs a mid-sized, like a trade services business that a whole lot of suppliers to trades in regional New South Wales. And when cost pressures hit, earlier this year, their first instinct was to sharpen their quotes to stay competitive. But once again, that is a race to the bottom, whereby we're just eroding our margin and we're putting our sustainability at risk. So we worked together on a bit of a different approach. We introduced a fixed price guarantee, a 90-minute response commitment that says we will come back to them much quicker than we ever have, and a quarterly maintenance check-in for regular clients to see how they're going, to see what they need, to see what sort of products they need us to stock. We actually raised our rates by 9%. We did lose customers. We lost 2 price-sensitive clients, but we gained 7 more new ones who specifically mentioned the guarantee and responsiveness as a reason they chose us over cheaper alternatives. So in the end, yep, everyone's scared of raising prices, but if we do so and we look at how we raise the value at the same time, we can actually pull that lever and people feel like they're getting a win and the price, potentially the price uplift. And look, everyone's paying for petrol at the bowser now, so a price uplift won't be a great surprise to them. But we didn't win in this situation on price. We made price less relevant by really ramping up value that cost us nothing, but the customer really valued it. So here's where we're at. The bigger picture. The margin squeeze facing Australian SMEs this year is real. It's data backed and it's not going anywhere, but it is solvable. But not by hoping input costs drop, not by silently absorbing the pain, and definitely not by racing to the bottom on pricing. The path forward is built on these 3 disciplines: knowing your true cost structures before you make any price move, communicating price changes with the kind of transparency that builds rather than breaks trust, and shifting your competitive energy away from price and towards the value experience that larger competitors simply can't replicate. This is our advantage. It's what the businesses I work with are doing right now, and it's working. So the squeeze is coming for everyone, and there is a bit of a patchwork. Some industries are impacted harder than others, but what you do with that really matters. Maybe if this is something that interests you, you might want to jump on my website, do the free diagnostic, business diagnostic, and try and you get a personalised report, and that may help you really try and understand what does the highest leverage moves in your business look like right now. Thanks everyone. Have a great week.